Voldemort! Voldemort!
Voldemort! Come on in, take a seat beside me, my friend. Hey, look, here come T.A. Charlie. Let's see what he got to say.
Now broadcasting from a remote location deep in the bowels of the LA wilderness. LA wilderness. Somewhere under the wood and metal of a nondescript building surrounded by schnauzers and model tanks, we once again bring you The Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble, and you might want to remember that because we may only be on Rumble after today's show, just so you know. Anyway, look for it. It's one word, no spaces or anything in between.
Oh, no.
When you find it, go ahead and click follow. That way you'll know when we're streaming. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it. You can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can also catch us on Facebook for a little while. We'll talk about that in a second. Twitch, we'll see how long that lasts. X or TwitX, whatever they're calling themselves. Well, hopefully we'll stay on there. We're even streaming to YouTube today. I have a prediction. We will get a strike on YouTube today. There is a high likelihood that we will get a strike on Facebook today. So if you're watching on those two platforms, you might want to go get your Rumble account right now.
Oh, if we're going on Facebook and YouTube, we're going on Twitch too.
Well, that's probably true because we have gotten a strike on Twitch before too. So yeah, that's probably going to go too. So yeah, Rumble and X possibly.
We interrupt your day to conduct this commie detection experiment. If we're still here at the end of the day on that platform, they're not commies.
There you go. Anyway, then you can catch a podcast after the show if we're still there. It's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And if it survives on YouTube, it'll go to BitChute if it's working. Phones are on today. If you'd like to call in and a regular class member and don't know how to do it, pop me an email. But if during the show, I don't really monitor the emails. So if you do that, send me a comment so that I can go check it.
Yeah, that's the redneck monitoring system.
Yeah, it is. You can go to the blog page. That's roadtoconcord.com. Now, if you look for the blog page on Facebook, you won't get it because we got censored just posting the blog page today or yesterday. That's where you'll find all the show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. And oh boy, I haven't looked at them, but I know the show notes are going to, today's show is, and wait for Monday's show. We're going to have a show Monday too. Whoa. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's slow, but okay, he's caught up at the moment. But after this show, you might have some emails. If you find our classes helpful, please click the thumbs up, like, follow, subscribe, and share it with those you think could benefit from it. You might want to do it from Rumble so that they actually can watch it. Just warn them that Joe is an acquired taste. You will definitely find that out today. We do not have a delay. I do have a mute button. I'm going to have my cursor over that mute button today, but I may not catch it in time. Just a warning. This show is listener sponsored, meaning we do not solicit business advertising. You'll see why today, but it also doesn't limit us in the content we can provide other than the platforms, limiting what we can provide. With that said, we ask for your participation on a value for value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion.
Easy for him to say.
Of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, the show description on Rumble, and the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of you who do support this show. We wouldn't be here without you.
Hey, we all know T.A. Charlie isn't all there. Now, just stay seated and give it a
Don't
chance.
go anywhere, Charlie.
You'll soon realize we not might be the smartest, but we each independently form opinions based on reason and logic. We're free thinkers. Let's see what the Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic has on the lesson plan for today.
So, Charlie, you know how I've been in a bit of a funk for a while now.
Yeah.
Over a year. Well, I've been coming out of that funk. So the problem with that is the filters come off, or I have a hard time keeping them in place when I come out of my funk. And was the pre-show fun today or what?
Oh gosh. we need to start monetizing the pre-show.
We had to put prophylactic earmuffs on Natasha.
Oh yeah. Beep boops in terror. Yeah.
Yes, beep boops in terror. So folks, I'm serious, man. We're gonna have a MAGA head explosion today.
Oh, if you're MAGA today, you might not want to watch
Duct
this
tape.
show.
You need your duct tape.
Your feelings will be obliterated today, not just hurt.
Yeah.
They will be obliterated.
And here's the thing. I'm not even going to attack Trump.
No,
I'm not.
No, we're going to teach history. I'm just
going to say, danger, Will Robinson, caution, caution, danger, danger. But yeah, we're going to teach history. Now, real quick, before we get going, we have to establish some new policies on the road to Concord. From now on, the name for that republic that existed in Germany between 1918 and the early 1930s, from this point forward, will be known as Whiskey Romeo. Because apparently, if I say Weimar Republic, I get banned everywhere. So I can't say Weimar Republic. So from now on, it's Whiskey Romeo. And if we're talking about that guy who ended the Whiskey Romeo, you know, the idiot with the bad mustache and ticked off attitude, he's going to be Voldemort from now on this show. Because if I say the word that begins with an H and ends with an
yeah, don't even
we
say
get banned. So
yeah.
From now on, if you
don't
hear me
post it
talking
in the comments either, folks, because
yes,
if you do,
Voldemort.
you will get wiped off the platform that you're watching on. So
yes.
Just,
so if you want to discuss,
forewarning you, Aaron. I mean, whoever.
Forewarning. Yes. Yes. So if you want to discuss the Whiskey Romeo, just write WR. And if you want to discuss the guy with the bad mustache, just say Voldemort. Or he who will. No, you can't use he who will not be named. We use that for other people. Anyhow, just Voldemort. Okay, so we'll get going. So if you, Whiskey Romeo, there you go. If you hear me say Whiskey Romeo, you know that that's the republic that's in the headline. And if you hear me say Voldemort, you know that that's the guy who ended the Whiskey Romeo. Okie dokie. We got to start with this. Charlie wanted me to show you this. How about that, Charlie? I posted. Oh, they even took it down there. They took down the warning just now. Facebook's on a roll. You know, they told us that they're no longer censoring anything. They're just censoring their censoring.
Uh-oh. Have we lost Facebook already? Because one of
my comments
didn't post.
We may have. And I don't care. Because what we're going to be talking about today is history. It's just
we still
history.
Live on Facebook? I'm
refreshing.
refreshing.
We got one person watching us on Facebook, so we're probably dead on
okay,
Facebook.
it looks like we are still live, so maybe there was just a technical problem on the post. Okay.
So before we get going anywhere, before I talk to you, okay, Charlie, thank you. Before I talk to you about Whiskey Romeo, see, you're gonna go to your homework right here. Well, your show notes. You know, you go up here to January, right there. Right here. This is your show notes. It's just a few things for you folks. Just a few things. Got Aaron's favorite picture at the end of the show. But we're going to go up here and we're going to start with, and I love my picture here. We're going to have America, Can America, Green America. We're probably going to end up with Mex America. You know, that's nothing wrong with that, Becca. Yeah. Maybe. Anyhow. I want to start by drawing your attention to a few stories. This one here, Wayne Root. This is from the Gateway Pundit, December 16th, 2024. It says, Wayne Root says, I've studied politics since 1964. Trump's victory was much more than a landslide. It was a miracle from God. Oh my gosh, people have... Okay. It may well be. I'm not going to dispute that. But I don't think it's the miracle that a lot of Trump supporters... Not in the way that they're wanting to think. But you come down here, and it said, the past summer, I got together with platinum-selling Christian singer-songwriter Natasha Owens, and we co-wrote a song about President Trump called The Chosen One. Do you all, if you're a believer, if you are a believer in Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Bible, do y'all not understand the problem with calling Trump the chosen one? Now, I understand anointed Messiah. That's what that means, the anointed one. I understand that more than one person's called anointed in the Bible, and they're not all Yeshua, Jesus. So I get that, but there's a messianic atmosphere around Trump. Be very careful with that. Be very careful with that, because it ties in with what we're going to be talking about with Voldemort in a little bit. Okay? I'm looking at history, and I'm not seeing repetition, but I am hearing rhymes, baby. And it's rhyming so good, I'm hearing hickory dickory dock, Trump ran up the clock. I mean, it is rhyming really well right now. And it's not what he's saying, it's what he's doing and what the people around him are doing. You know, words are one thing. You know, the walk, you talk the talk, pilgrim, but can you walk the walk? Well, he's walking a walk that can be very, very dangerous. And I'm worried because he's showing signs that he's going to do exactly what I was worried he was going to do. And in all honesty, I voted for him. Full disclosure, I voted for him this time. I did. I knew what I was doing. This is the first story about how it's a miracle from God. You be very careful with that, because Voldemort said the same thing when he first started out. And then here, our country is a disaster. The Gateway Pundit again, January 2nd, 2025. Our country is a disaster. A laughingstock all over the world. Trump sounds the alarm in late night statement, demands CIA action before it's too late. The CIA. CIA's deep state, folks. What do you need that? Deep state, I need you to end yourself. Please commit Harry Carey. It ain't going to happen. They might try it on him like they did with Kennedy, a couple of others along the way. But you're going to have to do this, Mr. Trump, President Trump. But he's talking about how messed up the country is. And in this case, he's talking about the criminals being let into the country. And yes, thing is, he's right. Don't get me wrong. He's right. He's correct. The open borders have been done. Yes, I know. I see that. CIA equals KGB. It's not too far off. Gestapo, maybe. We've got people who've been allowing, and it's not, if you think I'm Republican, we've been against that. No, you haven't. No, you have not. No. If you're a Republican, do not defend your party on this matter. You could have stopped this, but you won't. You won't pay the price to save the country or to protect the nation. You won't. Your party will not do it. You've had opportunity to shut this country down many times until something was done about this, to shut the government down. You won't do it. Oh, we'll take a political hit. You're taking a political hit now. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of your rank and file are all ticked off about, we don't want, Greenland and Canada, whatever. We want security at the border. MAGA's people, the Trump administration, the incoming Trump administration hasn't been paying as much attention to its rank and file as it should have. So if you're a Republican, you have not defended the border like you should. So what we have here is they have allowed criminals, violent criminals, gang members into this country. Have you noticed that the crime rates in Venezuela have gone down? They have. Have you been? Oh, the sociologist in me is showing again, right? Because I check on these things. You know why? They say it's because Venezuela is becoming a utopia. No, they've exported all their criminals here to the United States, because now you got these Venezuelan gangs taking over apartment complexes in Chicago and Colorado and all over the place. And then you got the lamestream media saying, oh, it's not happening, even though you got people all over the internet showing you that it's happening. Well, I guess that's all AI created. We're all faking these videos of these people doing these things, and we can trust the lamestream media. They've only been busted umpteen gazillion times faking news reports, right? So trust the known liars, the known proven self-admitted liars, and go with the people who are trying to cry for help, saying that they're the ones that are lying. I guess this would be a good time for me to come in and say, warning, I'm in a bad mood over all of this, and I don't have all my filters up. I'm doing good to keep what I got up and running. So you got this one. Then you got this next one. This is the next day. This is January 3rd, 2025. Again on the Gateway Pundit. In Gracia, America is breaking down. This was Trump in response to the NOLA terrorist attack. And he's right. The country is breaking down. It's by design. It is by design. Whether it of human hands or of spiritual hands, you must destroy the old before you can remake the new in your own image. That's what it means to heat up the world so that you can remake it in your own image. You need chaos and lawlessness so that you can remake the world and therefore prove that you are a god. You remember the Fabian socialist picture of their stained glass window? Next story. Trump floats Canada becoming 51st state as Trudeau steps down. Together, what a great nation it would be. New York Post, January 6, 2025. He's made this comment several times now. Canada offered to take the West Coast. If we'll give them the Northeast as well, they can have them all. That's a deal. This is not, do not dismiss this. Don't dismiss this. I'll explain why in a few minutes, but do not dismiss this story. That's not a throwaway story. Then here, just the news. This is House Republicans introduce bill to allow Trump to negotiate Panama Canal purchase. President Trump is right to consider repurchasing the Panama Canal. China's interest in presence around the canal is cause for concern, Johnson said in a statement. This is from January 8th, 2025. That's not a throwaway story. And a lot of people are all for this. That House Republicans are introducing that bill. Trump refuses, this Gateway Pundit, January 7th, Trump refuses to rule out military action to secure Greenland and the Panama Canal, citing economic and national security concerns. Okay, real quick. Why is Greenland such a problem? Why is that necessary for security concerns? Some of you are too young to remember this, but there was a guy by the name of Tom Clancy who wrote a book, and it was called The Hunt for Red October. And in that book, he got himself debriefed by the American intelligence communities because of all the information he revealed in there. Turns out it was all public knowledge, but they thought he had classified sources. It was that sensitive, but it was all public knowledge, and he showed them where to get it. Well, he wrote another book called The Hunt for Red October. I mean, not the Red Storm Rising, excuse me. Red Storm Rising was another book. That one's very important. Red Storm Rising came about from a war game, a board war game, a war game that you play on your table. Just a bunch of guys, kind of like D&D or any other type of war board games and stuff. Well, in the war game, it led to a commercialized version. It's called Harpoon. You can look it up. But it led to a game where Russia took Greenland, seized it. Well, why? Well, that allows them to interdict the convoys to help support England and Europe in a full-scale war. So if Russia were to invade Europe, we wouldn't be able to get supplies over there to them. It allowed the aircraft to interdict, and it was a real mess in the book. And that's exactly what would happen in real life. So this is not such a far-fetched thing. But the way he's going about doing this, there are problems with it, okay? But he's not ruling out military use with the canal and Greenland. And then you have this. Gateway Pundit, January 7th, breaking. President Trump declares he is changing the Gulf of Mexico to name it Gulf of America. What a beautiful name. Well, Marjorie Greene introduced a bill to do just that in Congress. What is with all this, folks? Why? Well, it's America. We're going to make it beautiful. Going to make it great. It's going to be the best America. Going to be the beautiful America. Going to be the most expensive America. Yeah, I know. Well, that's just Trump being Trump, Joe. Yeah. Don't discard this. These are not throwaway stories, folks, especially since it leads to things like this. Gateway
America, Pundit. Uber alles.
Yes, that's exactly where we're going. Gateway Pundit, January 9th. Video. Mike, whoops. There we go. Thank you. Mike, was it Cernovich or Cernovich? Whatever. He calls on the Trump administration to move into California and clean up the fraudulent elections and protect the people from Democratic lunacy. Okay. Well, what's going on in LA right now, the fires? Have you noticed how many Hollywood stars have suddenly become concerned about the left-wing political policies in their state now that it affects them, or at least the effects of those left-wing political policies? Jamie Lee Curtis, no less, was on there absconding and just yelling at the governor and the mayor of LA because we pay all these taxes and you couldn't even provide firefighting apparatus. Well, dude, Jamie, baby, sweetheart, they were doing DEI just like you wanted them to do. And they fired all their firefighters who wouldn't take the jab just like you wanted at the time. And they won't clear out the underbrush because of the poor little field mouse. Have y'all forgotten about that back in the 80s, in the early 90s? The field mouse. That's why you can't do anything with the brush in that area. Well, Jamie, they were just doing what you voted for them to do and supported them to do and told them to do it. Now that you have been bit in the butt by everything the conservatives told you that was going to lead to, now all of a sudden you got a problem with it. I have no sympathy for you, Miss Curtis. Go away. You bother me, girl. But what's going to happen is this is going to serve to turn the second largest city in the country toward the right. Don't ignore that. I don't care about the specifics here. Quit looking at the flavor. Start looking at what we're dealing with here today. Ice cream. The sociologist is talking to you today. Sociologist and me. Remember, I've got that degree. Yeah, I know. Tooting your own horn is so crass, Joe. There's new people watching. For the sake of the audience who hasn't been with me for a while, I have a sociology degree. I pay attention to things like this. Also, real quick, I don't know if you can hear it, but the puppy has been locked out from coming up here into the studio, and she has found out she can't open the door anymore, so she's downstairs barking at the door because she's unhappy. So if you hear it, I apologize. The sound-ending mic is maybe not able to take care of all of this. So what we've got going on here are these stories. These are not nothing stories. Now you got this one. This is from Breitbart, and this was published on 9 January. Report, Trump previews 100 executive orders with Senate Republicans. Now, if you're a Republican, we've had trouble with Biden doing all these things by executive order. Are you going to be okay with it when Trump starts doing everything by executive order? You do realize what it's called when a president makes orders that carry the weight of law without going through the Congress. Y'all know what that's called? Dictatorship. So I didn't like it when Obama did it, or I didn't like it when W did it. I didn't like it when Clinton did it. I don't like it when Trump does it, or Biden. But MAGA's all for this. Okay. So these are the stories I wanted to bring your attention to. There's a reason for it. These stories, like I said, they're not nothing. They're not go away. There's trouble in these headlines. Taken together, you have to put them all together. They espouse a feeling of what could be known as Trump mania. Especially, the lead story about Trump being a miracle from God and he's being the chosen one. Yeah, okay. Which God? Yeah, I know you think it's the God of the Bible. Are you sure? I'm just asking questions, folks. I'm asking you to be really sure you know what you're doing here, okay? Now, put all of this aside and go to this next story I have for you. I wrote this. It's up on the it's up on the blog and it's up on our Facebook page, the Road to Concord. But this, God help me, but it's hard to sympathize for these people. This is about the fires. I wrote this on January 8th. Now, why do I say this is connected to the Trump stories? Because it's going to make a lot of people hostile toward the leftists in this country. There's already a growing hostility toward Biden, the economic pain that we're suffering, the lawlessness that we're suffering because of him, the loss of faith in the world because of him and his policies, the problems we're going to have with energy, with food. Y'all realize that the food processing plants are still burning down. That we had one just a couple weeks ago. The reason you're going to have trouble getting eggs is because they're killing off all the chickens. Oh, bird flu, kill them all. Just like they did with the pigs in 2020. They're trying to force you away from eating meat. Now, what's that got to do with anything? Okay, why would you not want to eat meat? Well, it's environment, Joe. Oh, crap. They're going to be blaming the environment for what happened in LA. We'll cover that Monday. climate change is a joke, and climate change had nothing to do with these fires. But people are going to start moving away from that. And that's the point. That's the ice cream we're looking for here. You're getting greater parts of the population hacked off. Even former supporters of the left wing are getting hacked off. So as they get upset with the communist wing of this secular humanist bird, they're going to go over to the wing that appears to be working better. And in this case, that's going to be the nationalist wing of the secular human bird, otherwise known as fascism. That's what I'm worried about. What happened in the Whiskey Romeo, if you weren't at the show earlier today, that's our new code word for the republic that's in the headlines for the show today, Whiskey Romeo, because if I say it, we get bleeped, deedled, banned, deleted, because, I can't talk about history, especially that history. Well, if I can't talk about it, why? Because if you talk about it, you might educate people. People might see what's going on, realize that history is repeating and rhyming, and you might actually find out who's doing it and why and do something about it to stop them. So what I'm telling you is all of this may be nudge. You might be getting twofers and threefers here, folks. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but there are a few similarities between this and the Maui fires. Now, I'm not saying it's the same thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going tinfoil hat on you today. But I'm telling you there are some similarities here. And I'm not discounting the fact that somebody here might be benefiting from these fires politically in an agenda style. But what I'm looking at right now is you got people who are ticked off right now with the left wing. So the article might seem insensitive. I didn't say I won't have a forgiveness or grace for these people, but I don't have sympathy for them. And we'll cover all of that in detail on Monday. That's not the point of the show today. The point of the show today is to go over something that a lot of Americans hear thrown around, but they don't take the time to go look at it and figure out what it is. And I wish they would. We're going to talk now about the Whiskey Romeo, just in brief. Here is the Wikipedia page for Whiskey Romeo. If you're listening to the podcast or you listening and you can't see the screen, I can't really help with this, okay? We're talking about a republic that existed in Germany between 1918 and the early 1930s, 1933-ish. Okay? Most people won't listen to the history, but I want you to see this part right here. It was a controlled revolution. The establishment of a new republic, 1918, 1919, in Germany, was a controlled revolution. Does that ring any bells? Does that set off any fireflies in your head? Where else have we seen a controlled revolution that uses the laws to subvert the existing constitutional republic, democratic republic? Where have we seen that? Woodrow freaking Wilson and the progressive movement of the United States. Yes, boys and girls, that's right. Excuse me. Now, in this case, the controlled revolution was overthrowing the monarchy of Germany during the end of World War I. But this is something that we're going to discuss here in a little bit. I'll walk you through it in a minute. Next link here is the Whiskey Romeo summary. Tells you what it was, when it was, et cetera, et cetera. The reparations summary, Treaty of Versailles. We're going to get to these. And then right here, these are all from the Encyclopedia Britannica, Last Days of World War I, tells you what's going on. I put these in here so if you want, you can go back and read these later. Okay? And then how Germany fell, the rise and fall of the Whiskey Romeo, 1918, 1933. Going back to your homework, right here. Let's set the stage. It's the end of World War I. Germany has been convinced to surrender. In part, they were promised an end of the war without victory. Nobody was supposed to win. We're just going to quit fighting. Thank you, Woodrow freaking Wilson. However, in part, they surrendered because of a lie. Like I said, enter Woodrow freaking Wilson. I put this story up there for you. It's from Cambridge University Press. And it's right here. Now, you can go find these later. what I want to do, I know I'm popping around on the screen on you, but I want you to do, because this is in your homework, this is in your show notes rather. There's a summary from that link from the Cambridge University. It says, if German nationalists during the Whiskey Romeo could have overheard what Woodrow freaking Wilson told the British Prime Minister David Lloyd George 2 weeks before signing the Treaty of Versailles, it would have confirmed what they had believed all along. It was Wilson's deep-seated hatred of Germany that had led him deliberately to deceive and betray the German people by promising them, quote, peace without victory, unquote, and imposing upon them a treaty of infamy. This treaty of infamy is the Treaty of Versailles, and it sets the stage for the rise of Voldemort and the start of World War II. Now, let me set this down for a little while. Woodrow Wilson hated the Germans. His second term, when he ran for office in America, he promised America he was going to stay out of World War I. He had no intention of staying out of World War I. He lied. He lied to the American people, just like I've found out Abraham Lincoln lied to the American people. Wilson wanted us in that war, and he used the sinking of the Lusitania as an excuse to get us into that war. The Lusitania was a cruise ship that was sunk by a German submarine. It was running a blockade where Germany had announced to the whole free world, if you come through this area, neutral ships, if you come through this area, you're subject to being sunk without warning. The Lusitania went anyway. There were a lot of Americans on it. Lusitania was a British flagged ship. It was sunk. There's a very high likelihood it was running war goods against our neutrality clauses, the legal state of neutrality, against the United States. We were helping England when we shouldn't have been. FDR is going to do the same exact thing before World War II. I got it. I understand. Wilson went so far as to ignore the murder of Germans in America prior to the start of the war and during and after the war. And he put people in jail for speaking out against him and his policies. He did a lot like the January 6th thing. He just declared you a subversive or an enemy to the state and put you in jail. And it could have been nothing more than you talking about Wilson in your own home, disagreeing with him, and your children reported you in the schools, and they came and took you out of your home and put you in jail without a trial. There were couple 100,000 American citizens in jail without trials, just like the January 6 people are, thanks to Woodrow freaking Wilson. Okay, that happened. And a lot of it was his hatred of Germany. So Wilson promised Germany, when he gets into the war, he promises Germany, he says, because what he was after was the League of Nations. And Wilson wanted everybody to think he was such a great guy, such a great statesman. Look, he wanted to be worshipped, loved, adored. So he tells the Germans, he says, I'm going to bring in here and I'm going to give you a peace without victory. So nobody wins. Nobody's at fault. Well, that would have been a really good idea had he actually meant it, because Germany did not start World War I. They didn't. Germany was not at fault. They were the victims of a manipulation. World War I started with, so we're told, with the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand. He was a Habsburg or whatever. He's down in the Balkans region. And it got out of hand. One thing leads to another. The dominoes started falling. And everybody just started shooting at each other. But Germany didn't start that. There's very good evidence. It's an indirect case. It's circumstantial evidence, but it's very good evidence that it was a group of international bankers and the hidden hand that we call the New World Order. I would connect you to the Fabian Socialists, because they're coming to power right about this time, and soon afterwards they're formally organized and established. It's that group of people that started this war. Why? They wanted to redraw the lines of Europe and Northern Africa, the Middle East. And that's exactly what they did. They wanted to redraw the political boundaries. They made new nations. They drew the nations and upset political alliances so that they could do what they wanted to do in the grand scheme of things moving forward. We're still paying the price for this today, for meddling by people who don't really know what they're doing. Think they do, but don't. So this is what's going on in World War II. And then Wilson gets into this, and he promises Germany a peace without victory. And Germany agrees to surrender. Well, not really surrender, but to end the war, to call a truce. And then they're forced to accept The Treaty of Versailles tells them they're forced to accept blame at this point. Well, folks, Germany wasn't really losing the war yet. They had won on the Russian front. Now, it helped that Russia pretty much folded when they had the start of the Communist Revolution. But they found a way to end the war with Russia at the time, and they had pretty much ended the war in the Balkans, and in Italy was a stalemate and everything. So it was just Germany against the Western powers, against France, England, and America. And everybody will tell you that our military might fold to Germany. Nah, not so much. Not so much. They could have gone on forever with the way they were fighting. Trench warfare, you don't go very far. You know, it's not easy to make a breakthrough there. So Germany didn't want any more of this because it was just bleeding the populations of all their young men. This was a horrendous war. Millions of people died or were wounded, horribly, grievously wounded because of the way they were fighting. It was like 20, 30, 60,000 people a day were being killed or wounded on one side. So if everybody attacked in a general offensive, you'd have hundreds of thousands of people in a day killed and wounded. So what happens is the Treaty of Versailles is forced on the Germans. It's not what they were promised. So we force this on them. We go to this story here. I'll pop this one in here. This is from History, or History Channel you see up here, history.com or whatever. The Treaty of Versailles punished the defeated Germans with these provisions. And some of the provisions disarmed the German military, while others stripped the defeated nation of territory, population, economic resources, and forced it to admit responsibility for the war and to agree to pay reparations. Well, folks, this is the start of World War II right there, that treaty. It is. And I'll go on through the show notes and everything here for you. Take this back down. The Treaty of Versailles was heavily influenced by Wilson in his irrational hatred of Germany. False assertions that Germany was responsible for World War I. It wasn't. The war was actually started. I told you about that. But now here's the problem when you have this. You took away all of Germany's empire holdings in the Pacific and in South America and everywhere else. Part of that was Argentina, I think, at the time. So there were some islands and everything that they took from Germany. They took all that land. They divided it up between the winning powers. And then they told Germany that they took some of their land in Europe. And they told them you couldn't ever have a military more than 100,000 people. Well, Germany at the time was actually Prussia and Austria, Hungary, the Germanic nations. They have a very, very proud military history, and it goes back years. You know, there's especially the Prussians, the Saxons, very proud history of being a military people. So now all of a sudden you took their heritage away from them as well. And then you told them you've got to admit guilt for a war that they did not start. They didn't. And then they have to pay reparations to people that they didn't start the war. So now you got to pay reparations to France and England and America. And the amount of money they had to pay was draconian. I mean, it was just, it guaranteed the collapse of Germany eventually. Germany was not going to be able to pay it, period. So you first have to understand that the Whiskey Romeo, controlled revolution, similar to the progressive one here, but it was also socialist. Now, it comes about right at the end of World War I, 1918. And this is part of why Germany decided to end the war, is they were tired of everybody dying. A lot of people don't realize that the French army revolted. They mutinied against their leaders at one point in the war. They were able to put that down, but they did mutiny. Coming on the board from Quest, he says, I wonder if the up-and-coming treaty between Russia and Ukraine will be the actual start of World War III, even though I think it's already started. We'll address that. That's a very good question, and it's really worth wondering about. So the Whiskey Romeo that replaces the monarchy, the German monarchy, it's socialist. It's a socialist government. And again, similar to the progressive government here in America that Wilson started and that we now have, that it's grown into. It was struggling to pay the reparations imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. And Germany eventually paid its debts by simply printing money. They just started printing Deutschmarks. That's the same way we digitize money that we do not have today. So Germany just printed the money to pay its debt. That caused hyperinflation. So, inevitably, and that's going to happen. Yes, sir?
We call that quantitative easing, if you remember from the past few years.
Yes, we do.
And that's what caused all this inflation that we have right now and all that stuff. But anyway, just so if people don't understand the terms today.
Yep. So the hyperinflation, and I'll get back to this in a minute. Let me just read what I put up there for you. It led to hyperinflation, which increased the widespread unemployment in Germany. Still, the Weimar Republic struggled on for a while longer until finally the Great Depression created conditions which made Germany ripe for the picking. Okay, so that ended that. And then there's a story in here. I'm not going to put it up for you, but it's how hyperinflation heralded the fall of German democracy. In 1923, the collapse of the Whiskey Romeo economy impoverished millions and gave Voldemort his first chance at seizing power. Now let's bump this down. Hyperinflation. That's when it takes, you used to have to pay in Germany, in the Whiskey Romeo, you would have to pay for your coffee when you bought it, because by the time you were done drinking it, the prices had gone up. Yes, it got that bad. When people got paid on payday, they would have to use a wheelbarrow to take their pay home, and they would go shopping immediately, because if they didn't, they wouldn't have enough money at the end of the day to go buy their same amount of groceries. It was crazy.
This happened just recently in Venezuela. So
yes, and it happened. There was one point in sub-Saharan Africa, I think it was Nigeria, they had a $1 billion note for 1 billion, whatever their currency was. It got bad there too. This happens everywhere. Whenever you follow the practices we're following, and now people will say, well, Joe, why isn't it happening here? It is happening here. But because of the mechanisms that the socialists have put in place in this country, you don't see it as badly as you would have if you'd have been in the Whiskey Romeo at the time. But we do have inflation. Now we could go to Shadow Stats. You've seen that site. I've shared it with you before. And you'll notice that the inflation rates under Biden got up, double digits at one point. Well, they were actually high double digits if you were counting inflation the way they did back in Jimmy Carter's day. They changed it under Reagan. They changed it again under Clinton. They changed it again under W. They changed it again under Obama. And they changed it again under Biden. Every time they changed it to make the government look better and for the people not to see how bad things are. So you got 5 changes, and all of them designed to make it not look as bad as it is. It's bad in this country, and you and I both know it. Going to the grocery store, we know it. But now, I don't want you to look at the specifics. Inflation is a problem in this country, and you're having a hard time paying your bills. Unemployment is a problem in this country. Not because we have widespread unemployment. We don't. We have underemployment. Everywhere you go, there's still help wanted signs up, right? They're importing people to do these jobs. That's part of the great replacement theory, where we're going to replace our population with other people who are more used to being ruled, who won't kick back against our new masters. So you don't see what's happening with the unemployment in this country from the populace. So what happens is we put a lot more people in this country on welfare programs and pay them not to work than we've ever done before. If we put their numbers, and we exclude their numbers from the unemployment rolls, if we put these people who have just quit looking for work, who have gone on welfare, if we put them back in the unemployment rolls, we have very high unemployment amongst the Americans, the citizens of this country. You do. So the conditions we have in the Whiskey Romeo are here. I don't care about whether or not, but that's chocolate and that's vanilla and that's pistachio flavored ice. I don't care about the flavor. What I'm looking at is, how does it affect the feeling of the people? A sociologist that I was studying, I can't remember his name, but back in the 90s when I was in college, he calls it anime. It's a feeling of unrest amongst the people. That feeling may not be as intense in America as it was in the Whiskey Romeo, but we have it today. And the fires and the border and the terrorist attacks in this country, And the way different people are treated from, we're giving $25,000 a head to the Hollywood millionaires, and we couldn't give $750 a head to the people in the Carolinas for the flood. And those people are shivering in tents in record cold weather, and we're crying for millionaires who are just going to go to their second or third or fourth home. And yeah, I know that not everybody in LA is rich, but folks, most of there wasn't a house in the Palisades that wasn't worth close to $1 million. And over there, that's going to cost you at least $20,000 a year for your taxes and your homeowner's insurance. If you can get the homeowner's insurance, that's $20,000 a year just to live there. Okay. That's not paying for anything else. So they're not poor. But this causes a general, especially amongst the working class. That's where we need to put the focus. The working class. This is why the working class is starting to switch over to the nationalist Republican Party. This is what I'm seeing. That's what I'm worried about. The move in the American people. The set of feelings, the conditions that were in the Whiskey Romeo, the conditions are here in this country. Now, they may not be as strongly felt. Well, then that means nothing will happen. Wrong. The people in the Whiskey Romeo had just come out of World War I, and they were farther back in time where they were closer to the land where you had to grow your own food. They were a tougher, rougher people. So it takes a lot more discomfort, and pain and suffering to get them to revolt. They didn't revolt against the Kaiser until the very end of World War I, when millions of their young men had been killed and they hadn't gotten anywhere for it. And it didn't look like any end in sight. That's what caused the Whiskey Romeo to be created. It was a revolution. It was a revolt. So you're going to have to push those people in the Whiskey Romeo harder than you have to push the fat, lazy, soft, weak American populace. Okay, we lost 50,000 people, 55,000 people in Vietnam, Joe. Oh, it was horrible. Was it? Was it? You lost 55,000 people in a summer in 1944 in World War II. You lost 350,000 people in the air war over Germany. You see, we had become accustomed to one death being so horrible, we have to quit with a war. Now, I'm not belittling Vietnam. Don't get me wrong. If you're a Vietnam vet, you know I got love and respect for you. You know it. You were betrayed by this country, by the progressives. This country was betrayed by it. The point, though, is it's not going to be as hard to push America into doing something it shouldn't do, especially when all of our social media makes it where I can't even talk to you about this stuff. Comment on the board by Mr. Quest again. And with each generation of our youth that goes through the public education system, it ripens even more. Yes, it does. Yes. So now, the next thing we need to understand is that socialism was part of the political fabric in Europe at this time. It just was part and parcel all across Europe. Still is today. And it is part of the American fabric now. We just don't recognize it as socialism because we're America. Far be it for us to be socialists. Well, you are. You call it a bureaucracy. That's socialism, folks. We also need to understand that fascism is a form of socialism. It is. It is. Period. End of story. It's a form of socialism. I'm not going to go through that again. We've done it before. I've gone through the definitions. That's a fact, Jack. The guy who coined the term, Mussolini, said so. He defines it. He's the one who invented it. He gets to define it. He also called it what we would call today community organizing, which makes Obama a fascist. Well, in a sense. And the two wings of this secular humanist bird were at war within Germany in the 1920s and the 1930s. Now, I've got a post up for you. It goes to one of my older blogs. It's kind of dead, but I link you to it. This is on the road to Damascus. But Antifa and the American left are modern equivalents of the black shirts and brown shirts. And they are. Antifa, BLM, what was the other one? Occupy. All of these different movements in this country are the left-wing equivalent of the black shirts in Germany and the brown shirts in Italy. What I want you to see is this. This is in the show notes as well. On the left, as Antifa anti-fascistisch action, anti-fascist action. That flag is from Germany, 1920s, 1930s. This one over on the right is from the United States in recent past memory. They're the same flag. It's just German versus English. It's the same people. It's the same spirit. Nothing's changed, literally. And it tells you on the left is the flag of the parliamentary or paramilitary wing of the German Communist Party in 1933. And they were fighting with the National Socialist Workers' Party, i.e., the word I can't say, for control of Germany. On the right is the flag of the Antifa, anti-fascist movement in America. Notice the similarity. Today, blah, 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 blah. Folks, nothing's changed. Literally, nothing has changed. Literally, you're dealing with the same thing. Now, coming up on where we're going to take the break. I'll save this for when we come back. But real quick, let me go over a little more history for you here. Hitler, Voldemort, sorry. Hopefully that doesn't get me banned. I was thinking ahead. Voldemort wrote a book, very famous book. I don't even want to say that just in case. But he wrote a book in which he told everybody what he was planning on doing. And the world didn't want to honor the threat. And in that book, he described how he chose the color red to sympathize with the communists in Germany, to try and get them to come over to his party. Yeah, the book sounds like My Camp. Yes, it does, Natasha. Very good. So Voldemort wrote My Camp. So the colors of Voldemort's party, political party, were intentionally chosen to sympathize with his socialist opposition, his communist opposition. This is why the mainstream media in this country, if you remember back in the Reagan era, when Reagan won the election in a landslide, the electoral map was blue. It was one red state. It was blue because once upon a time, the GOP was usually represented by blue in this country. Well, after that, after Reagan, they switched it to red. Well, that was an intentional attempt to peg the GOP to communism within this country because this country doesn't like communists. This goes on, folks. This never changed. There are spiritual meanings behind these colors and these symbols. So Voldemort chose that color on purpose. Voldemort wrote in his book that the communists and his political party were brothers. They were not that far apart. And they were actually allies with communist Russia up until the start of World War II. But before that, Voldemort's military trained in Russia so that the Western powers couldn't see what they were doing, couldn't see that he was violating the Treaty of Versailles. So there were ties. Voldemort and Stalin were, restless friends. They weren't exactly buddies, but they were friends. Excuse me, folks. I'm having trouble with allergies today. But so this is the environment that you're going to find yourself in. And this is the feel of the people in the country of Germany that gave rise to Voldemort. This is what I've been worried about. Voldemort was a populist, a nationalist populist who wanted to restore Germany's reputation. He wanted to restore the German name. Charlie, does that mean anything to you? Wanted to make a name for Germany again.
Yeah. Make Germany great again.
Yeah.
That's basically what he was saying.
Something, Return of the Gods.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you also have to remember that what party über alles, well, that means party overall, over everything else. Folks, you have an equivalent in this country today. MAGA.
Yeah.
MAGA is movement overall. I know it says Make America Great Again, but that is exactly what Voldemort's early movement was. And if you go back to the first story I showed you today about how it was a miracle, he'll say that nobody has ever come back from defeat like Trump did. You want to bet? Voldemort was put in jail by his political allies.
Yes,
and was
yes, he
forbidden
was.
from ever having anything to do with politics again.
Yep, he was. That's right. Yep. Oh boy. Yeah,
So I would think that Voldemort had a very good comeback too.
he did.
What
He had an amazing comeback. 'cause
Yes.
he was ostracized for quite some time.
And he was praised in this country because he made the
He
trains run on time, and he gave the people
He was
universal
yes.
health care.
Yep. Yeah.
There were a lot of things that people wanted done around the world at that time. You got to get yourself back in those shoes in that historic period, the spirit of the times. Voldemort was thought to be a great guy. He was Man of the Year on Time magazine, and
That's
not
right.
for a
That's
bad
right.
reason.
Yeah, I remember
The first time
that.
was
Yep.
for a good reason. And Voldemort had a buddy in Italy called Mussolini.
Yep.
He's the tops. He's the Tower of Pisa. That song's about Mussolini. 30 Rock. You know the building in New York? Mussolini's picture is on the wall. It was built into the wall to praise Mussolini, who was a really good bosom buddy of Voldemort. So you have to, and at the time, you know, the word dictator was not thought of as a bad word yet. Voldemort and his buddy Mussolini turned it into a bad word. And at the time, fascism that was praised as being the government style of the future. Fascism was just communism with national borders. That's all it was. And it allowed it allowed business owners to retain control of their businesses so long as they did what the government told them to do. Sound familiar? If it doesn't, go ask the banking industry, the insurance industry, and the auto industry whether or not they got told what to do under W and Obama. Comment on the board from Mr. Quest. How close of a comparison can the illegal immigration population in America and Trump's initial solution be made to the flood of Jews in Europe that Voldemort was against? Okay, you're on the right track, Mr. Quest. And we're going to cover that after we come back from the break. Charlie, we're about to go to the break. But you're in the right eye. It's going to create the same feeling of enemy within the population, the same unrest aimed at a group of people. That's the ice cream here. Turning the population against a group of people, turning their anger with the situation they find themselves in against a boogeyman, a scapegoat. And we'll go into that when we come back from the break. When we come back from the break, I'm going to show you what's been bugging me now for years. And I'm on record all the way back in 2012. I told us we were heading for right where we are now. That's what got me kicked off of Bernie Thompson's show. Well, not kicked off, but I was no longer welcome. He didn't like me anymore because of a blog post I put up. And that's what got my Republican friends angry with me. It was back then when that started. And I told everybody about the threat that Trump poses in connection with the blog post I wrote on the Rio Norte line in 2012. When we come back, I'm going to show you that I was right. Not a prophet. I just understand history and human nature. I just read the tea leaves ahead of time. Nothing that everybody could have done that if they were students of history who understood history. We'll see you in 6 minutes. We'll go over it. Reading some of the comments. First of all, if Kelsey Nicky's still with us, the puppy got loose. She figured out how to get through the door.
Yeah, I heard her chain jingle. I'm like, oh, she figured it out. Oh, your monitor went out behind you. So if you want to fix it.
That has to be fixed, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that because that'll really mess up the lighting, and it's not working right now.
Yeah, whatever. I'm just letting you know.
Anyhow, it would help if I were to look at the right screen when I'm trying to fix things. I love being non-professional. All right. Anyhow, so let's get back to where we were at. We're gonna start talking about. We've been talking about Whiskey Romeo. Yeah, we're over to Target, and Kelsey's still with us. Yay, the puppy got loose. She's a mess. That one is a mess, and boy, she has got to be wherever her daddy is. Poor puppy. She should get closer to her mama. Let's just get back into where we were at. This is going to be a link in your show notes. How did Voldemort rise to power? I want to show you the conditions. This is what we're going to focus on, the conditions that were going on. The harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles riled up many Germans, especially the guilt clause for starting World War I. Remember, they were falsely accused of something. Now, I ask you in your show notes to think about examples of this as you go through it. And I want you to be honest with yourself. And we're going to do this ourselves right now. And I'm going to have to change this. Let's put this over here like this because I got a feeling Charlie and or maybe Natasha are going to chime in at some point when they want to add to this. Let's look for parallels, something similar. So have many of us been accused of something that makes us feel guilty that we're not guilty of? Well, I've been accused of being a homophobe just because I won't accept somebody's personally chosen pronouns and think that he should be able to go to the girl's bathroom with my niece or a daughter or something. And I'm a little upset about being told that I'm a racist simply because I'm white. So there are I'm a little upset at being told that I'm wrong for having pride in my country because apparently my country was wicked and evil in some way. So, okay, we've got plenty of things for people to feel a little cranky, that are dealing with being accused of something that they didn't do. And here's another one. And traditional political parties were tarnished by association with the signing of a treaty. Okay, well, in this case, we have a Republican Party that was tarnished simply for the people supporting Trump because they were tarnished as all being white racists. So people are upset with that. That's a parallel, folks. That's a parallel. So Voldemort promised to overturn the treaty and restore German pride. Has our new president-elect promised to overturn all of the harm and damage done to this country and restore American pride? Yes, that's exactly what MAGA means. Okay? So there's parallel number one. The second, fallout of the Great Depression led to mass unemployment and hyperinflation, leading voters to turn to more extreme political parties. Okay. Well, at the time that Voldemort came to power, he was not extreme yet. So there's a bias in this article that's not paying attention to the history. We're looking backwards with the 2020 vision of being in the future, having lived through it. When Voldemort and Mussolini came to power, they were not thought of as being extreme. Same thing with FDR. Okay? FDR didn't promise anything different than Voldemort did. So what makes Voldemort extreme and not FDR? All right. But what you do have is that feeling. There are people who can't find a job or a job that pays enough to live. Okay. So that's there. This is the economic pressures, and we have inflation. I've quit eating breakfast in the morning. I used to go down the road to the Hardee's. It was $5.28 2 years ago. It's almost doubled. It's just under $9 now in 2 years' time. That's not hyperinflation, but it's enough that I can notice it in real time. I see it. What we're dealing with is the feelings, not the specific political facts on the board, but the feelings within the people. So we've got all of that. The third point, weakness and ineptitude of successful Whiskey Romeo coalition governments. In other words, incompetent government. Oh, we've had that, haven't we? W, Clinton, Obama, especially Biden. To one extent or another, about half the country thought that all of those administrations, regardless of party, was inept. Well, now you even have people on the political left in this country starting to blame their own politicians for, like, the LA fires. And you got AOC out there telling Democrats, hey, look, don't just automatically knee-jerk reflex go against the Republicans. They're starting to understand that even the dimmer bulbs in the party are starting to realize what they're doing wrong. But it's turning their rank and file, their not radical rank and file, to the Republicans. It's causing a shift because of the way the people feel. So then you have number 4, Voldemort promised full employment through such programs in road building and rearmament. Well, we have parallels here. Trump is promising, prosperity again. We're all going to be able to find good jobs because we're going to make America great. We're going to take off the chains. We're going to punish people with tariffs so that we'll be more American businesses. We've got a parallel. Next point. In return for their support, Voldemort promised business leaders lucrative state contracts such as arms manufacturing. This idea was also popular with the German army. Okay. Well, you have heard the very same thing. We're going to use the military to take Canada and the canal and Greenland and blah, 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 blah. We're going to be strong again. People are going to quit laughing at it. Well, that's going to go with the military. And I'm going to turn America loose where it can drill, baby, drill. That's going to go with certain businesses. I'm going to put tariffs on the fort. That's going to go with American. Okay, we've got a parallel there too. Voldemort appealed to traditional German beliefs that the greatness of the nation, strong family values, and a classless society. Folks, that's American ideals too. That is, class. The class society in this country didn't exist before Woodrow freaking Wilson and the progressives. There were haves and have-nots, but everybody thought that you could climb the ladder and become rich like anybody else. We don't think that way anymore. That classness has been forced on us by these people. But we have this. Trump is promising to make everybody good again. You're going to restore the family and traditional American values. So we've got that one. Voldemort promised an expansion of Germany to find new lands and Lebensraum, living space, where the German people could prosper. We're going to take the canal. We're going to take Canada. We're going to take Greenland. We're going to take over anybody that causes us problems and insults us. Okay, we've got a parallel there too. Voldemort used propaganda to identify what his party described as common enemies of the state, such as outsiders and Jewish people who, he claimed, were holding Germany back. Well, Trump has done very similar things against the other party and people aligned with the Democratic Party, the American left. And whether he has not specifically named a ethnicity, but he has said illegal aliens and aliens, period. Now, he didn't say where the illegal aliens have to come from. So if you're going to look for apples to apples, that's not the point. The point is he blamed everything on the Jews and got the people to hate the Jews. We do see an anti-illegal immigrant movement in this country. And within MAGA, they're even anti-legal immigration. Look at the way they just attacked Elon Musk for legal immigration. He wants to bring in more engineers and computer science majors and things because America's not producing enough of them. And he knows this. And MAGA attacked him for it. So much so that he told MAGA to go take a flying in their own face. There's hatred going on there. The feeling is real. That's what we're looking at. Excuse me. The feeling is there. And yes, Trump does use propaganda. Everybody laughs about it. When he does mean tweets or when he uses a bad name, that's propaganda, folks. A cult of Voldemort was created, which promoted the idea that he was the savior of Germany. The first story we had today talks about Cheeto Jesus. He's the chosen one. We've got that. The establishment thought that by inviting Voldemort to power, they could be better control the Voldemort's party phenomenon and benefit from its popularity themselves. If you'll remember back to the first Trump presidency, it was the Tea Party movement. And they let the Tea Party movement in and then destroyed it. The GOP did this. They allowed them into the power structure. They did something similar with MAGA. And then they surrounded Trump with rhino politicians to try and control him. And essentially, they did destroy him. It was because of people like Pence and things like this that went on, and Fauci and all. So, yeah, we've got another parallel here. Final point. Once made chancellor, Voldemort used his power to eliminate rivals. He ensured the German parliament had little power and began to establish a dictatorship with himself as the undisputed head of a one-party police state. Now, we have not seen that yet, but he has promised to punish his rivals. And the problem with that is they broke the law. He can do this. He's got no problem. I mean, he could legally punish them. I hope he does. Not the point. He's not going to be a dictator, Joe. Did you miss the story I shared with you where he's looking at over 100 executive orders that are going to carry the weight of law? That's the definition of dictatorship. Now, Charlie, I'm going to need a little help. I'm bad at math. Did we miss any of parallels with any of the points that brought Voldemort to power, or did we find a modern-day American parallel in connection with Trump for each and every one of those points?
That's a slam dunk. That's why I asked you the other day in our pre-show. I'm like, do we live in Whiskey Romeo? And your response was yes.
Hold on just a second. Yeah, we live in Whiskey Romeo. I got a cough here, folks. Sorry. But do y'all see what my worries are? Now, when I wrote my blog post in 2012, Charlie, Trump wasn't on the screen yet. He wasn't on the scene.
He wasn't even on the radar. No.
But I saw all of the social movements starting in this country. And it doesn't take a lot to put the social movements in the equation and come up with, we're going to end up with a nationalist populist leader. Mm-hmm. And when Trump walked on the scene, what did I have?
Yeah, there you go.
A nationalist, America first, populist leader. That's all I'm saying, folks. Now, we do have something that didn't happen with Voldemort. Voldemort was egotistical. It was his way or the highway. Trump has shown that his leaders, his people, the people that follow him, can influence him. So here's the difference. Remember when, Charlie, you remember a couple shows back, it's a while back now, but it's a week or so back, I told everybody, you're going to have to stay on top of Trump. You're going to have to. If you're not part of social media, Truth Social, and if you're not following Trump on X, get there now. And whenever he starts to go off rails, hammer him. Don't insult him. Don't yell at him. Don't tell him he's a screw up. Just say, hey, that's not what we asked you to do. That's not why we voted for you. That's not what we were expecting you to do. Don't go off the rails. You're following the trail of Voldemort. Talk to him in polite but harsh ways that might get his attention and help keep him on track. Or if you don't, if you MAGA, you're going to create the next Voldemort. Not might, will.
Yeah.
Will. It's just going to be a matter of what flavor ice cream we end up with.
I guess I need to get more active on Truth Social.
Whether we like it or not, that's how to deal with this.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. And then also be very careful about this. Just stay where you're at there, Charlie. There are some other stories I put in your homework. This is how Voldemort used democracy to take power. And he did. He used the system. Mm-hmm. Progressives have been doing this. Historians reveal how Voldemort dismantled democracy in less than 2 months.
Yeah, he was very good progressive from that point of view.
Yes.
Definitely.
And then
he used his system for his benefit.
And then we got this. Cackleman, Gateway Partner Cackleman. America's existence depends upon a government of laws and not men. Now, this is true. If we lose the rule of law, we lose the country. Well, we are not under the rule of law right now.
We're not.
But if Trump comes back and uses the law to punish his political adversaries, you're not under the rule of law then either, even if they are guilty of the laws they broke.
Yeah.
So you see Charlie, do you see the quagmire we've made for
Yeah.
ourselves?
Yeah. It's.
Decades of not wanting to be bothered about getting involved. We are now in a big mess. And those who are going
Bleep
to
if you do, bleep if you don't.
Yes. And those of us who understand this problem properly are going to be too few. We're a remnant. We are a remnant of the American ideal. The ones who are going to be upset with this show, the MAGA, if they outshout us, they win. And Trump will become Voldemort. And the country will have been lost by the very man who promised to save it. Now, something happened over the last few days that gave me great pause. Did anybody see Trump yucking it up with Obama at Carter's funeral?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, that was. Yeah.
Does anybody remember me warning that it is very possible that Trump is a very good, deep psyop to undermine the real Americans left? Does anybody remember that warning?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, just because he's yucking it up with Obama doesn't mean that's what it is. But I'm going to tell you right now, if I was in a position like Trump and I had said some of the things he said and I actually meant them, hey, no way I'd have even sat next to that man, let alone talked to him.
Makes me wonder what they were really discussing.
It's a warning, folks. I'm just trying to be a watchman on the wall. It's a warning. That's all. It's a warning. If his supporters don't stay on him and hold his feet to the fire, it will become an inevitability. Because he is, like it or not, Trump is a narcissist. He is. Now, he might be in control of himself to some extent. And people might say, well, no, that's just his shtick. No, it isn't. But I know that Bongino will tell you he's a great guy and everything else. You can be a great person, a narcissist, and it won't show until you don't get your way. And when you don't get your way, the people who work around Trump will tell you he's very vindictive. He is. Well, that's because he's a narcissist. How do I know? Recovering narcissist. I recognize my old self in Trump. Once a narcissist, always a narcissist. I see myself in Trump. I do. Part of that narcissist is showing today. I don't know if you recognize it as that, but my arrogance is out lately, and I've got to watch it. I told Charlie, be ready with the Deedle button. You know,
and I missed it.
I wasn't.
We don't have a delay, unfortunately.
Well, that was my mistake there, but
yeah, but still,
we have got to help him help himself, which leads me to something else. Boom! Throw you in the pew. This is from Crosswalk. We're getting the leaders we deserve. And we're getting 2 Chronicles 7:14 all wrong. Let's stop quoting 2 Chronicles 7:14 as if it's a verse on political intercession. Real change does not begin in the Senate or the House. What they're saying is quit talking about if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves. Quit thinking that that is a plea for God to help the country. Start understanding it's a plea for us to help ourselves and to physician cure thyself and get the plank out of our own eyeballs. And they're telling us because we will not do that, because we do not understand scripture, because we will not bend our knee and humble ourselves, we are getting the government we deserve. Very, very good, timely, and appropriate post.
Yep.
Was that just a notification for you?
Yep.
Oh, by the way, this was August 11th, 2016.
Wow. Jeez. Yeah.
Why is that? Why is that important? Because the two people in this picture, whether you went left or whether you went right, you were getting the government you deserved. Folks, The country is in trouble, more trouble than it realizes, and it doesn't even know it. I'm not attacking Trump. Not yet. I'm certainly not accusing him of being Voldemort. However, I'm well aware that the same conditions that gave rise to Voldemort seem to be in play with Trump's rise to power. And I was expecting it since at least 2012. I'm also well aware that Trump is following many of the same patterns as Voldemort. In other words, doing the same things, different ways, but same idea. But then the left, the American left, is following the patterns of the communists in Europe. I see both as threats to America and our founding ideals and to Yahweh's people. Again, I'm not saying that the past has to repeat itself. I'm just a watchman on the wall, sounding an alarm to a possible threat. I can only hope that those who have eyes to see and ears to hear will see and hear and respond according to Yahweh's will. And for those of you who are watching, I have Brother Aaron's favorite little picture in here. How's your spiritual warfare going? I also have a few other extra stories down here about how Voldemort rose to power and the Whiskey Romeo and how it allowed Voldemort's rise to power. There's a lot of good links, and I looked through them to make sure that they work for you, that no bad information in there for you, at least not what I would consider bad information. I had talked to Mr. Zinker about this before the show, and he had told me that, you know, he wasn't as in the know with this subject, with the Whiskey Romeo in that era of history as I am. Well, for those who are new to the show, you need to understand that for 23 years now, I've made my living on World War II. So, well, yeah, Joe, but this is dealing about before World War II. Well, if you don't understand World War I, you're not going to understand World War II at all. And if you're going to study World War I or World War II, you got to understand how World War II started, and that is because of the Whiskey Romeo and Voldemort. So yes, I have studied these areas. I won't call myself an expert, but then again, what am I when I make my living off of that era of history? I study it. I really, Charlie, you've been in here. There's how many bookshelves in this place?
Oh gosh.
And every one of them on the left wall and in front of me are World War II history.
Yeah, he knows World War II history. Yes, definitely.
So and it's not a brag. It's just that, and I just told you, I'm not an expert.
It's just something you've studied a lot. It's
But
something that you're interested in. Yeah.
Right. And I know the Weimar Republic, not as well, but I've learned it. Whiskey Romeo.
He meant Whiskey Romeo. Yep, Romeo, Whiskey Romeo.
Note to Charlie and Natasha. Reprogram me with Hammer later.
Well,
Gladly.
I'm surprised we're still live on all the streams.
Yeah.
I really am.
Well, maybe it's because the American left thinks I'm on their side. I didn't say that, did I?
No.
No, I'm not. I called them commies. So,
Or maybe they're waiting and then they're going to be like, okay, that show's out. Now we're just going to ban them all.
okay. Well, we've got a comment on here from Aaron Spikes. He says, I've studied World War I, World War II for quite some time. I know this history fairly well. Brother Aaron, have you seen me go off the tracks anywhere? I don't think you have. Otherwise, you'd probably said something to me. So, I mean, that's an area that and when I tell you I study it, I study it. I want to know the politics behind everything and what caused this to that. I know why Voldemort lost in Russia. And it wasn't because of the Russian winter. It was because of his need for political victory. So we could get into that some other time if you want. But there was a period of 76 days in 1941 where there was nothing between Army Group North and Moscow. Nothing. The Russian army had been defeated. But Hitler stopped them because he wanted the 2 million prisoners around the Dnieper River. Well, at that time, had they taken Moscow before the winter, all of Russia's railroad tracks went through Moscow, which means they would not have been able to evacuate the factories to the Urals, which means Russia would have fallen. The reason the Allies didn't assassinate Hitler was because Hitler was the Allies' best asset. He also had an opportunity to take out Northern Africa, seize the Suez Canal, and come up under the Caucasus through Turkey. And had he done that, Turkey would have joined the Axis powers and fought with him.
And you meant Voldemort.
Voldemort.
We're going to get it today.
I don't care.
It's just a matter of time.
No, I haven't
Correlation
done one
between-
between Trump and King Saul, but Natasha
No,
came
but,
up with a really good
Natasha
one.
came up with a good one. Yes, she did.
Tell everybody what yours was, Natasha.
Yes.
Are you talking about when I mentioned Absalom and the
Yep.
private?
Yep.
Yeah. One of King David's sons, Absalom, he went in the gate where, people kind of hung out back then. And when people had grievances, instead of going to the king, he'd stop them, listen, pretended that they were right. And he basically went around saying, it's a shame I'm not in power. I would make everything good. And so, yeah, the Israelites kind of a lot of them sided with him, and it didn't go very well.
Nope. This is what happens when we don't focus on the ideal. Quick little philosophy discussion real quick. I get accused of being an idealist all the time. And Charlie, don't go anywhere. Well, if I was not an idealist, then I couldn't sin. You know where I'm going with this yet, Charlie? What is sin in the Hebrew mindset? It's an archery term, isn't it?
Yeah, it's missing the mark. Yep.
Well, if I don't have a target to shoot at, can I miss the mark?
Nope.
So if you don't have an ideal, you cannot sin. Kind of like when Paul says, if there's no
That's
law,
true, yeah. If
you
there's
can't
no law,
sin.
you can't. Yep.
Well, what if
Yeah.
there's
So-
a target and you just don't know it's there?
Well, that's not what we're trying to teach here. At the
Okay,
moment.
sorry.
There's no harm in being an idealist. It's when you become a perfectionist that you have a problem. You have to understand that you can never obtain. It's the asymptote. You can get closer and closer and closer to the ideal, but you'll never get there. But the perfectionist will not do anything unless they can get there. They get caught in a feedback loop, or they'll run everybody over in the pursuit of perfection. But you can strive to improve, get closer to the mark. We call it sanctification in the church. You can sanctification means getting to be more and more like the Messiah, but you're never going to become the Messiah. And the minute you think you are, you've gone too far. Well, you can accuse me of being an idealist all you want, but all my idealism means is I know what the target is, and I'm shooting for the target. I see too many Americans who have no ideal, and they accept whatever compromise comes along that makes them happy, which leaves you smack in the area of everybody does what they thought was best. Does that ring in anybody's ears?
Mm-hmm.
Comment on the board from Deltros 1 about
reprogramming.
agree about reprogramming Joe with a hammer.
Ooh,
Well,
I
you
was the
do
hammer.
realize
Beep,
I
boop.
was a Polish Marine tanker, so you're going to need to bring a big hammer to get through this
Big hammer. Yeah.
Ah, crap! Your skull will shatter the hammer.
skull. Possibly.
Disappointed
Mjolnir.
beep boop noises.
Bring Milnor. You can hit me with that. So I think I've run out of talk now today. Are there any questions on the board? Does anybody understand that I'm not condemning Trump or MAGA? I'm saying watch them. You know, I used to.
This is a warning show.
Yeah, this is a warning show. My uncle used to have a Doberman. She was a big Doberman too. She was like 100-pound Dobie, and her name was Pandora. And he would tell her, "Watch him." And whoever he pointed at, you didn't move until he called that dog off, because that dog would sit there and watch you. And if you moved, she'd go over there and she wouldn't bite you, but she'd grab you by the back of the leg in that big old mouth and hold you until he either called her off or you decided not to move anymore. So what I'm telling you is to watch them. Watch them close. Gonna need a BFH. It's my type of language for the day. So anyhow, I'm not coming down on him. I still have hope for him. I still have hope for the country, because let me tell you, man, my business is suffering right now because of what the left has been doing. But I'm also worried for the nation. The nation's falling apart. I know people love to yell at the postal system. Up until about 4 or 5 years ago, the problems the postal system had was Congress. I haven't the foggiest idea what's going on with them now.
Oh, it's such a mess right now.
Yeah, but you don't track it the way I do. Because of what I do, I go in every day and track where things are going. I have to. I got to track things. I've got things that have been coming to me. They'll get to Pensacola. Panama City is supposed to be the next step. They'll get to Pensacola, and then they'll send them off to another part of the country.
I know. I've seen that happen.
And it has to turn around and come back here.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that a lot. And I mean, it goes right down to my local. I've got a rural postal carrier, and I don't know how much of it's actually his fault, but he's the worst mailman I've ever had. I've had to contact mine. I've had to put in inquiries several times because of packages that it'll say the property was inaccessible.
I've had that.
I have no fences. I have nothing. There's nothing stopping him from putting a thing on my porch or whatever.
I have a covered porch, right?
Yeah, it's covered. Yeah.
When I moved here, first thing I did is I told my postal carrier, I said, look, I do a home business. I bring really expensive things through the mail. They're insured and all, but not always for what they're worth. And I gave her, we used to treat her with presents for everything and give her Christmas cards because at that time I was still whatever. But I treated her as well as I could.
Right.
She brought a $450 book one time and put it right underneath the drain spout in my garage on a rainy day.
Oh, gosh.
Now, I got home in time before the rain started, but oh my God, if she had ruined, and it wasn't a matter of how expensive the book was, it had taken me 2 years to find one.
Find it. Yeah.
Same person?
Same woman. She's
gosh.
done this many times. She's just lazy. There's no pride in what we do. Now, I'm not picking on the postal system. This is a symptom of our society. And if you think society cannot collapse overnight, you've never had sociology classes for one thing.
Yeah.
So
they don't take long.
What's my view on Pam Bondi?
Yep. Yeah, I was just
be very careful with her. She's a mixed bag when she was the Florida.
She's the mixed bag. Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Because she did some good things, then there were some things where.
And the problem is they were very good and very bad.
Yeah, yeah.
So, got to keep an eye on her. I'm not exactly happy with that. There were better choices, in my opinion. And as far as where do we get the Joseph Goebbels, Bongino, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, anybody that's going rah, rah, rah for the Republican Party, there's your Goebbels. They're there. Remember, when you're looking for these things, folks, don't look for an apple to apple. Yeah. Let me put it this way. Don't look for orange to orange. It's okay to have tangerine to orange.
Yeah.
Because a tangerine is not an orange, but it's pretty darn close. Okay. Or you can have, well, Joe, that's apples, tangerines, bananas, and oranges. See, they're not the same. Are they? They're all fruit.
They're all fruit.
So that works. That's what I'm looking at, the lowest common denominators, folks. I'm looking for the foundational ideas behind all of this. And if you'll go back and you'll read through go through that post, I put it actually in your show notes. I copied that section out. You go to your show notes and look at that list of things and ask yourself, because I only gave you a few ways you could see parallels. There are a lot. Similarly, if I post the list of grievances on the Declaration of Independence, the original one, I can find things that we are doing today that if it was bad under King George, Jefferson would have gone apoplectic under this government. He would have probably grabbed his musket himself and headed to the field.
All right.
So,
in this one, Aaron, it's already happened.
Digital currency and biometric overnight. Well, I don't know about overnight, but it's already happening. It's being done already. So, yeah, they're going. My uncle was a hippie, and in 1974, 75, when I lived in Michigan, he was a teenager. He was literally in the hippie movement. He came home one time from one of his hippie gatherings, and he was all excited about how the world was going to have to, if it was going to be saved, one of two things had to end. They had to just do away with money as we know it, or I forget what the other one was. But he also told us there'd be no children in end times. Well, they're going to do away with money as we know it. They're going to digitize it.
Yeah.
That's doing away with money as you know it.
How much of your money is already digitized? I mean, if
And
you've
once
got a
they
bank account, it's digitized.
once it's fully digitized, you don't have money. You don't have money. And then I used to laugh about doing away with all the children. There are not many children left in the world nowadays. So,
No,
Joe, what are
they're
you
not.
kidding?
No.
You're not looking at what I mean by a child. If he's 4 years old and he's running around with a gun in his hand, he's not a child. If he's supposed to be or she's supposed to be old enough to choose their gender and okay, a sex change, they're not a child anymore. We are not treating our children as children. Greta Thunberg is not a child, hasn't been for years. She was turned into a political toy.
Plus,
It's all
most of the world, except perhaps the Islamic community, and there may be a couple others on the fringe, but we are not having enough children to maintain our populace.
nope. The government in Japan is doing backflips
We're
to
dying.
get people to have children.
Oh gosh, Japan's in real trouble. Theirs is worse than ours is. Yeah, they're in real hurt.
Oh, I've watched Japan. The sociologist in me is fascinated with that place.
Yeah, that is. Whew.
Dude, a young Hugh Hefner would have a field day in Japan right now. So you fill in the blanks on your own there. So anyhow, that's what I had for you today. It's a warning. That's all it is. It's a warning. Monday, we're going to do a show on the fires, and it's going to be an educational show. I used to live in Anaheim. Well, yeah, Anaheim, because I was stationed at El Toro, California. Anaheim's just down the road from the Palisades, folks. And if I was in my old house in Anaheim and I walked outside and looked northeast, I'd see the fires from the other one that they had. I forget what they're calling that now, but it's just south. It's on the southern southwestern slope of the ridges where the observatory and the antennas that you always see in the movies are. There's a mountain ridge road that runs north-south in this part of the world, and it overlooks LA. And in all the movies where you see them up in the rich houses overlooking the city, those houses are on that road. That road is burnt in most places. So that means multi-million-dollar houses are gone. It's a bad fire. I know exactly where all this is happening. I've been there. But I also understand the ecology, and I understand the geography of this area. I understand the climate of this area. I lived there for 2.5 years. I get it. These fires were inevitable. This was all just a matter of time. Now, things could have been done to make them not as bad. Things could have done to put this off that, could have mitigated some of this. But these fires this was just a matter. This was like me predicting the rise of somebody like Trump back in 2012. It didn't take a genius to do this. It just took somebody who was willing to face the ugly truth, look the monster in his face and say, yep, you're a monster, then poke him in his nose. You just got to be able to face the ugly truth. That's all. That's it. Monday we'll do that. But at the same time, we will talk about some of the political aspects of this. And hopefully this might be a wake-up call for a lot of lefties in California. This is their fault. Hollywood, it's their fault. So, yes, ma'am.
Just a quick comment. It's kind of back to about World War I and II.
Okay.
But I just wanted to bring up that most people think they know World War II. Lots of emphasis is put on it. It's heavily, supposedly a big topic in public schools, or was. But I've noticed we don't really put a lot of emphasis on World War I. And when you said, if we don't understand World War I, we can't understand World War II, it kind of put me in the pew and made me think how most of us think we understand the New Testament, but we're not very familiar with the Old. And how can we understand the New Testament without the Old Testament?
The Treaty of Versailles guaranteed World War II. Guaranteed it. It was going to happen. And when Germany, you just have to understand it. And then you have to understand what was going on before World War I to understand World War I. This is all Lawrence of Arabia. I mean, if you don't know history, you don't understand your world today. You don't. And I know a lot of people treat history as boring, dry. It doesn't have to be. I'm a science fiction reader, and there's a book called Hammers Slammers, and it's about the space-going tankers, okay, hover tanks and everything. But now, when you the point I'm about to make is when you read the books, they talk as though all the different people in outer space now, the different planetary colonies, they go back to royal type families. You know, they got kings and nobility and everything again. Well, all the plot lines in this book series, every one of them comes out of history, comes out of the history of the second millennia, you know, after 1000 AD. It comes out of that period between 1000 and 2000 AD. He just literally changed the names and stuck to the historic plots. The books are awesome. And all he had to do was write his tanker mercenaries in around them. And the tank mercenaries actually correspond to real life mercenary groups that existed at the time. He didn't do anything but find a story in our own history and then science fictionize it. So the plot line, as fascinating as it is, and as intriguing as they are, and as intricate and detailed as they exist in our history. We just don't look at them as stories. We look at them as, well, so-and-so did such and such at this place on this day. That's bad history. Bad history is, why did they assassinate the Archduke Ferdinand? Well, they were wanting to redraw the boundary lines. Why did they want to do that? You had a bunch of men that wanted to have political power over the world. They wanted to rule the world. So they were sitting down trying to just come up with a scheme, devise a scheme by which they could cause the different powers in Europe to start a war and not get blamed for it. So they arranged for this whack job. They started talking to him in his meetings, and he got it in his head to go kill the Archduke Ferdinand. They didn't care who he killed. They just needed him to kill somebody of noble royal nobility. And then from there, they just started poking and pushing until they got everybody. And you can find their fingerprints in history. Well, when history is told that way, at least it's a little more interesting. There's intrigue, there's backroom, mystery and plotting and, plotting going on and scheming. And it becomes a historic, mystery, like a spy novel. That's how we ought to teach history. What year it happened isn't as important as to who did what and why.
Yep. I remember growing up, it was more so kind of just memorizing facts from a book.
Yeah, that turns you off.
And I don't say that as an affront to the teachers or anything. It's just, that's my experience.
The only reason you can get drafted, Mr. Quest, is because of Woodrow freaking Wilson. Oh, yeah, and Abraham Lincoln, who was Wilson's predecessor. Yeah, we're going to be talking to Mr. Zinker about this later here real soon. I got to finish the book I'm reading. All right, guys, we're going to call this a wrap for today. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your time. Hopefully, we're educational. I provided plenty of links for you in your show notes. You can find them in the description on Rumble and in the first links in all the comment sections of the different various feeds. You can find it on our blog. If you are not following any of our stuff, go to the blog, theroadtoconcord.com. Follow up, click to follow the blog. Just scroll down on the left margin until you see follow. Sign up for our to follow the blog page. You'll at least find out when we're going to do shows and things like that. We would like it if you were to follow us on Rumble. That's our home network. Or on Facebook, Twitch. We're on X. You can follow us there. It live streams to all of them. We're trying to educate, not just throw bombs into a crowded fire and scream fire and make like that, we're somebody. Not doing that. We try to bring the receipts. And if you go behind us and you read through the material and you come up with a different explanation for things or a different opinion on things, as long as you can give me a sound, valid, and rational explanation for why you believe that, I'm not going to fight or argue with you. We'll take it. We can agree to disagree as long as you know why you disagree. What we're trying to do here is help you understand, to help you know what you know because you know why you know it. If you don't know why you know it, it's just an opinion. It's not knowledge. I can have an opinion about anything. But once you know why you know it, you understand why you believe it to be true. You can defend it. Now it's knowledge. It becomes wisdom eventually when you put enough of it on top of itself. We're trying to help each other do that. How to think, not what to think. We don't tell you how to think as long as you're thinking. And thinking does have a structure that works better than any other. There are certain structures in the way we think that helps. It's logic. It's called right reasoning. That's another mission in this show. We haven't taught logic in a while, but we'll get back to it. You'll find it in our older shows. If we're helping, please hit the like button. That helps the show. Wherever you're watching, hit the like buttons. That really does help the show. If you like what we did, hit the social media, share the show wherever you can. But if you know somebody specifically that you think they might benefit, send them a link to one of the shows you've seen that you think might help them. Ask them to give it a chance. It's the message, not the messenger. Charlie and Natasha are great. I know that I'm an acquired taste. I know how I come off. I already told you in this show, recovering narcissist. I mean it. I got it. I try to stay humble, keep my knee bent, firmly pressed to the ground. Days like today, I have a hard time with that. It's bad knee. Push it back down. And I'll do my best. And Charlie and Natasha will tell you, I put people in place to watch me and help guard me because I may not notice what I'm doing. And I do it on purpose. So I guess what I'm saying is I know I'm an acquired taste because I know that I'm not the world's best person. I got that. But I'm trying to be more like the Messiah. I don't care whether or not people like me. I'm trying to actually live a life that would bring him glory and good reputation amongst others that watch me. And it's a struggle. So if you think we're helpful, spread the word. We don't advertise. If you are of a mindset that you want to see us stay here, we would humbly ask that you consider going to one of our links that, the donate buttons. There's one in the bottom of the description of the show on Rumble. There's a link on our our blog page. It's a link on the Facebook page. All we ask is $5 a month, a cup of coffee a month, a cup of coffee. It helps us keep the show running because when we get to where the show doesn't have enough donations, it will go away. I can't afford it on my own anymore. It's got an expense every month. Nobody's making a salary here. The three of us on this show volunteered. Your donations go directly to the overhead of not even electric bills. It goes toward paying all the different programs and services we need to put the show on in different places. So if you can, $5 a month. If you can do more, we'll take it. Because that way you can pay for somebody who literally honestly can't pay. We got it. We understand. And I hate doing this. I hate asking you to support us. Everybody in the world's asking you for that. If the show is more valuable than just entertainment, give it thought for that reason. Anybody can entertain you. And if I wanted to make money, I would start a show like I was telling Charlie earlier today. We'd call it The Ugly Truth. And I would make Bongino's Rumble show look like he was a choir boy. And I would make millions. I'd be the number one. I would take over Bongino's number one show within 2 years. I guarantee you. And yeah, I know. You're bragging, Joe. Those of you who remember me from radio shows, either here locally or up in South Georgia, you know darn well that the audience responds to me very well when I am in entertainment mode. The host in every place I've ever been has told me I'm a natural at that. Everyone, I've been on the radio 4 times now, 4 different shows. Every host has told me I'm a natural. I don't want to do what they do. Let them do that. That's theirs. If I can't be part of the solution, I don't want to be at all. It's what we're trying to be here as part of the solution. So if that rings with you, please consider supporting the show. At the very least, hit the like buttons for us and share the show and help the audience grow. If we're doing what we're trying to do. We love each and every one of you. We thank you for being here. We'll see you Monday. The show's going to be on the fires in LA and about what causes them. Whether there were politicians in LA or not, that fire would have happened. We'll discuss that Monday. Y'all have a good, safe weekend. Shabbat shalom. We'll see you then.